Johnson, and this is focused on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Boakai, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be tough on the question, what kind of government is President Boakai trying to run? And this question is based on recent happenings. For instance, the return of Augustin Gafuan to the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. What is he trying to accomplish here by bringing back Honorable Gafuan, being replaced by another Ellen-time Finance Minister, Bwama Kamara? So what is he trying to do here? We also saw that the verdict has been overturned in the case of Madam Councillor Gloria Mususka, the former Chief Justice. So, and when she came out, she said, we should do something about the justice system. So what do we have? A two-tier justice system in the country? The justice system that convicted Madam Scott, as she said, was injustice. The justice system that got her free, I think that one is justice. So what are we saying here? And could she have been still in jail if it were Weah's second term? Did President Boakai administration have anything to do with this time looking at the evidence and say there's not enough evidence to convict her? So we want to look at, based on that, what is President Boakai, what will be his legacy? We also saw a few appointments at the replacement at the central bank. So if you look at the finance ministry, you look at the Freeport, you look at the LRA, and now the central bank, you see that what is the governing or the economic philosophy of President Boakai that is pushing, that is driving him to these kind of appointments. We're going to be looking at that under the broad question, what kind of government is he trying to run here? What is his motivation for these appointments? And we also saw, I call it a mess at the DEA, where they got a warrant outside the jurisdiction of the place they wanted to search. They got that, they went, searched, and they said, and that search ended up in the CDC headquarters. Well, the Supreme Court intervened and they said, well, we didn't even, nobody signed it. This is coming at a time that President Boakai has suspended the three leaders or the directors of the LDEA since June 4th. So right now we have an officer in charge at the LDEA and they are making this mess. What kind of government is President Boakai trying to run here? Is his government trying to promote accountability? Is it trying to promote transparency? Is it the kind of government that Vice President, former Vice President Jewel Howard Taylor talk about our time to eat. What is he trying to accomplish here? What is how does he see Liberia? Where does he intend to take Liberia? Right. So that's what we're going to be talking about. What kind of government is he trying to run here? Let me welcome our governance advisor, Mr. Adman Salif. Welcome, governance guru.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm looking forward to diving into your questions here.
Thank you. Let me welcome, we had Depu Zuo, our resident economist. Depu has become minister now, so we can have him the way we are. Luckily for us, we have Thomas, who has stepped into that. FOL resident economist, Thomas B. Cannon. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dennis. Good to be here to talk about MFDP, CBL, LRA, everything.
Thank you. Let me welcome the man who has the privilege of working with three presidents, a diplomat, a teacher, a journalist, and also an author. Welcome, Dr. Abdullah Dukle.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm here to learn from my young colleagues and listen and share some thoughts with you.
We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. If it is Thursday, it's time to talk tough. Well, I must admit that I threw a lot of things at you. So, first one, the governors, our governors advisor to unpack them, right?
Mhm.
And you can choose where we want to start. But my question is based on these happenings, based on the actions and inactions of President Boakai and things that are happening. I want you to unpack this for us a little bit. Maybe I didn't present it well.
Hmm.
So, in your view, on it, what kind of government is President Boakai trying to run here? How does he see Liberia? Where does he intend to take the country based on what he's doing?
Thank you, Dennis. These are fair questions, but these are very convoluted questions also that you're trying to unpack in one sitting. And when you talk about how does President Boakai see Liberia, we could spend a whole hour or 2 hours trying to really understand that. You're talking about presidential legacy. You're talking about a president's philosophy, vision for the country. When you go down and say, well, what kind of government is he running or is he trying to run? Then we start to look at, who are his appointees, who is he bringing, where, and what kind of background do they have, what history do they have, and what are they doing? What have they done since they've been there so far? So just off the back, I just wanted to give that disclaimer that there's so many pieces there to chew on. But I like the overall question as to, you know, how President Baka sees Liberia. I have to say I've spent some time around the president when he was vice president, and when he ran in 2017. I had the opportunity to travel with him on a campaign trail a little bit, spend some time on his farm in Bumi. But also last week I was in Atlanta when he attended that diaspora African diaspora black uh,
Business something.
business conference where he did a keynote. It was really a moving speech, and I had the opportunity to listen to watch him deliver that speech, to do a press conference, to also just be casual with Liberians who came from far and near to see the president and talked about the country, talked about how he sees the country, the problems, the challenges, and what he wants to do about it, what is moving, what he's done already. What I saw in there is that the president has done a lot already and is really aiming to do a lot more. But they are not really being, his story haven't been told. His stories haven't been interpreted. To me, it's really underrated. People seem to think that he's not doing a whole lot. So I give you an example. I mean, when the president delivered that keynote and he went to the press conference and began to talk about opportunities that Liberia has, that he was inviting investors to come to Liberia, that the country was open for business. That we've heard this before, open for business. President Sirleaf said that. But the way President Boakai says it, really, he does it in a way that if you know anything about Liberia, you realize this man really knows the country. He knows the people. He knows the problem and the challenges that he faces as a president. Now, in terms of how he's forming his government and how he has formed his government so far, that just tells you the nature of the political marriages that brought him to office also, and the complexity of our society. Liberia is a small country, we like to say, but we're also a very complex society, right? You have multiple political interests, the unity parties there, and all these other alliances in the second round that help to bring the president to office. So in all fairness, you have to look around to see who's qualified to lead which portfolio, and which political wing are they coming from, which political organization, political party are they coming from, as an attempt to begin to reconcile the post-election. Because when you have elections, there's a lot of noises, right? And the country is also really teetering on the brink of sort of disorganization. So you want to reconcile and put a campaign behind you, be able to move the country where you are able to govern. That's what I see him do. And in the way he's done it, we may not all agree with everything, because some of the officials, we question how their competence, we question their performance, and we should, as citizens, that's what we should be doing. Be objective, question the government, and when they do well, we should also say and try to really speak well of the country. But I think in some, I will submit that the president has insurmountable challenges at hand. He knows what the problems are, what he wants to do, but the resources are not available as he would like to do, and he's moving to do something about it, in my view.
Thank you. Let me go to Tom. Tom, and I want to also start with the return of Augustin Kpehe Gafuan. So if you selecting a finance minister, or if you want to build your economic team, there's something you look. So I was looking at Gafuan. Is President Boakai thinking about, okay, let's see who can balance the budget? We saw Mr. Boamai Kamara, who came from the central bank background. Now, Gafuan, who was finance minister before and foreign minister before. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what is he actually looking for? What is he looking for? What economic philosophy that is he trying to push here? Is he trying to get at? Or is he simply trying to have an Ellen Johnson Sirleaf third term here?
Thank you, Dennis. I think there are a couple of considerations here. The issue of balancing the budget, I think the years where we did that mostly was when we were going through our debt waiver. We had, after the Civil War, we had this huge debt that we had to go through HIPAA to clear. I think I have spoken about it a couple of times here, that it wasn't really just a Liberia initiative. All other countries were going through. But at that point in time, because we did not have the ability to borrow, we needed to have this kind of balanced budget. That is, what we raise is what we are going to spend, because we cannot borrow more. By 2010, we moved beyond that. So from 2010 on to now, the reason why our debt is now where it is, which is almost 50% of what was waived, is because we've been borrowing. So the intent cannot be only on the issue of balancing the budget, which of course we might have to get back to now, because we are back into HIPAA, but because our debt has increased again. So it's right now 53% of GDP. So that means we have to be very careful. We have a very tiny window. Across all these developing countries, the maximum limit of debt now, where people start to worry that if you go beyond it, you get yourself into problem, is 60%. And we are 53% debt to GDP ratio. So that's a very tight fiscal space. So having a budget to be able not to borrow a lot will be a priority going forward. And I think that was expressed in this year's national budget, that the government was not going to go out there to borrow a lot of money. So that could be one consideration. The other consideration is that the Ministry of Finance, since it was established, it's a merger of the Ministry of Planning and Economic Affairs and then Finance itself. So right now, the ministry should not only be focusing on the finance side, that is to budget and then execute the budget, but we need to do a lot of development programming. And even when former Minister Boakai Kamara went to the Senate for confirmation, that was the first question that Senator Chie asked him, that since this merger took place over the past couple of years, why have we seen planning actually just lost from the agenda? We don't see a lot of planning happening. And then he said that the ministry should try to improve that. He was even leaning to the point of going back to where we were before so that planning could go back as a separate entity. So I think that issue of planning, not only on budget, that issue of planning, making sure that the different agencies have strategic plans, that they can do annual plans, is a consideration here, because that's where you can move development forward. And then the other thing is, I think his
Tom, let me. Are you saying that's Boakai's consideration for bringing Gafuan back?
That's what I'm saying. This is what Liberia needs at this point.
I know what we need, but is that what Boakai wants? Is that what he's doing? Or he's just trying telling people maybe if Gafuan doesn't make it, bring back Amara. Is that what it is?
No, you can't bring back Amara. Amara is a senator.
No, it happened during Edward Komosako won as senator, and those said, "My man, we want you at internal affairs." So it can happen. So my problem is, what is Boakai trying to accomplish here?
That's what I'm trying to encapsulate, to put it together. Because since the Civil War ended, we've made a lot of progress, but it has just been developing the budget and implementing that. You can say Gafuan was in that same situation when he was there, but like I said, it was at that point where we could not really borrow to fund a lot of our development. Yeah. And then you consider his trajectory since he left the government. He goes out to the African Development Bank, becomes country manager for Uganda, where he's managing a portfolio of, I think, $2.2 billion in AFDB's investment in one of the biggest economies in East Africa, that is hugely decentralized, that has an economy that is well run. So I think what the president was looking at in bringing Gafuan back is that he has been here before. He understands how this ministry needs to run. He has gathered additional experience, not only from his background as a finance person, but also on the development side, because these development agencies, African Development Bank, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, they are not just called development banks. That's the work they do. How to develop programs, how to implement them, how to evaluate them. So I think it's all these things that are combined. We're actually making sure that we can have an effective Ministry of Finance to lead the development process. Also, don't forget on the revenue side, trying to push the revenue envelope to $1 billion. Part of that work needs to be done on the finance ministry side, because finance ministry is responsible for tax policy and the LRA is responsible for tax administration. So I think it's based on these and other considerations that the president thought that we need to ask Augustine to come back from AFDB to come and help with the work that is needed to be done at the Ministry of Finance, when we are just trying to finalize a 5-year development plan, and then after that it has to be implementation. So I think there are a couple of factors that the president considered to ask him to come back, not necessarily because he served under Madam Salif.
Dr. Du, if we can take what Mr. Khan is saying on face value, why is Mr. Gafuan the second thought?
Why is it a second, not the first one? Why did he come? Well, maybe Boakai Kamara was more available at the time. Maybe there are other considerations that came into play. But definitely, from what Kanye said, we'll say he has the experience, and then also the advantage of knowing the place that he's going back to. Although after 6 years of tour, I'm not sure if it's the same ministry again. That's it remains to be seen. But you could say also, taking Gafuan back, is it taking him back, or is it, I'm not sure what to do with it, though, really. I would say, okay, he has an experience. He's been there, and I think Thomas made a good case of that. And then, well, you could say, okay, have we really looked hard enough to find other Liberians who may have experience and who may have different type of approach and all of that? That's when sometimes you say, okay, it's too easy to just say, oh yeah, I know somebody. Okay, you call your friend. So the tendency that you end up being in the forest and you never see outside of that forest. But Gafon definitely, yes, he has the background, he has the capacity, he has the experience, and he come from, let's say, development. So he has probably seen what people do in Uganda, what works, and I'm sure he will be able to correct some of the mistakes he made the first time he was there too.
Dr. Douglas, you
Dennis,
also work under President Sirleaf. I come to you, Mr. Sirleaf. And we see that we have a lot of Ellen era people now, the police director, A.B. Kroman from DEA, and the list go on. To what extent is President Boakai trying, as I asked before, is this an Ellen third term? Is he running away from the Ellen presidency, or is he embracing them, or is it just in people?
Well, it's the same Unity Party. So in Unity Party has not changed. What has changed is the government. I mean, there's a new administration. You
Yeah.
can say this is
I mean,
Unity
we see
Party.
that with the Democratic Party and Republican Party. They don't normally bring back the same people unless you enjoy the Ellen era and you think we're on the right trajectory. So is he really following up with the Ellen agenda? Is he doing his own thing but bringing the same people to do something
Well,
else?
I'm not sure, when you say following Ellen agenda or do his own thing, in Liberia, we don't have what do you call political ideologies and development ideologies. We just say, oh, development, we're going to build roads and schools and, pay people. So there's no ideology. We just manage the state. We really don't do anything. We don't create new ideas. So therefore, saying you following somebody. I mean, Unity Party was the second largest party. It had probably you could say Madame Sirleaf had probably a way of finding good talents. Because if all those people are coming back, it's not because they work with Madame Sirleaf. Because Boakai and Madame Sirleaf never talked to each other for 6 years. So therefore, it's not because they work with Madame Sirleaf, it's because they're good. They're good at what they did, and Boakai saw them as vice president, observing them doing their work, and that's why he's bringing them back. But I don't think people should make a mistake and think that this is a third Sirleaf government. No, it's a new government. It's a new administration, totally different. And Boakai has his own ideas about development. He has his own idea of what Liberia is. And he has some very, I mean, since you talked to him, he has very strong ideas about certain things, what Liberia is. It's not, well, you were talking about the government, people who are in. Madame Sirleaf would not probably surround herself with the kind of people he surrounded himself with to begin his first, these are people you send out to go do things, but you don't, they're not running your presidency. That's probably the only difference. But he brought the technocrats that work well with Madame Sirleaf and those who were without, how you say, bad reputation and all of that. So some of them are okay, some of them are not. But I don't think he's repeating the government. He's doing his own thing, using the best of Madame Sirleaf's team.
Or you say old wine in new bottle, maybe?
Well, yeah, you could say that. Yeah, the new one and put in the old bottle. Yeah, you got the state is the state, the government is the government. You got the three branches, and you still have Unity Party. Some of these kids were, young at the time when Sirleaf was president, and they went to school, came back, joined the party, stay in the party. Madame Sirleaf and Boakai had their problems. Some follow us, some stay with Boakai. Those who stay with Boakai are the ones who are now doing the thing, doing the Unity Party thing.
Thank you. Mr. Sally, you wanted to come in. On mute, please. Because I have a separate question for you, but go ahead, chime
yeah,
in.
the Gafon, quickly on the Gafon point, we like to forget that Gafon was also Minister of Foreign Affairs. So in addition to going to work for AFDB, the African Development Bank, and that experience in Uganda, that portfolio volume Thomas indicated here, the fact that you were also Minister of Foreign Affairs for several years, you establish relationships, internationally. You really got to see how other countries are doing things, and then you went to lead a regional bank's portfolio in a major economy in East Africa. Gafwan is not coming back as the same Gafwan we knew when he was Minister of Finance, right? This is somebody who now has not that he didn't in the past, but I think his appreciation for development and how you do, how you run a portfolio like the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning that has development component, development planning, monitoring, and also sourcing funding and finance for major projects. The public investment projects that the president wants to really focus on some of these big capital investment projects. You want somebody like that who has an appreciation for that, who has led these kinds of massive work in terms of planning and sourcing the funding and so on, plus the relationship he will bring, right? So you add that, you couple with his technical expertise in finance, in economics. I think we have a strong Minister of Finance who will help the economic management team.
And talking about the economic management team, let's look at it broadly. Let's look at the NPA, right? The person who's there. Let's look at the LRA, and let's look at the CBA with the officers in charge. Now we have Gafwan, who unquestionably we all agree with the experience, the skills and the experience to do the job. But how does he fit in that? Because if you look at the port, the free port, the gateway to our economy, what is President Boakai trying to do with that mixture?
What is your question?
Is he just providing jobs, or is he after something here?
No, this is not providing jobs. Look, the president talks about Mr. Double Jala as someone who is taking a pay cut to leave from the Carter Center. I think he was country director there, right? And you can consider that in a way as international work that was doing in Liberia. And Mr. Jala has a history of transparency, professionalism, somebody who goes by the books, somebody who, people respect, very, very highly respected. I was in Liberia in May, June, providing training and leadership training facilitation to commissioners at the LRA, and I interacted with the Commissioner General. I tell you, he has ambition, his vision for raising revenue, mobilizing domestic revenue to finance the major investments that the president wants to do, public investment in the country. You have the right person. The president is very pleased with Double Jala's performance. So
I like him too, but I don't know if you can say the same thing about the Freeport and CBS.
Well, at the Freeport, you have a young man who, from all indication, from what we see, he's bringing in some innovative ideas. He's implementing things that we believe will make the port to be a better port. He's, touring, looking at other regional ports, going to not just in African region, but looking in the Middle East and other places to come back, bring these new ideas to keep the port running 24/7. That's one thing that he has really focused on. He's focusing on recruiting talents and really that Jim Collins sort of analogy, right? Who's on the bus and what seat do you put who on what seat? Putting the right people in the premium seats to keep the port running. My understanding is he's bringing really aggressive reform there, and it's making some people uncomfortable. But that's what's needed really to be able to make Liberia to make progress. I haven't heard or seen really major missteps that Mr. Sekou Dukule under his leadership at the port that we've seen so far. What I've seen is this is somebody who just recently deposited a significant amount in the government consolidated fund. He's raising revenue like Mr. Double Jala to help fund the president's agenda. So I mean, I'm trying to understand the question where you're carrying that, but look, I've heard
carrying it is that team because
yes, I've heard people listen. Dennis, one thing Liberia, sometimes we tend to be we minimize things and reduce it to tribalism, reduce it to regionalism, reduce it to or religious affiliation, right? I've seen people on social media say, oh, this is the president's economic management team. They're all from Lofa. They all happen to come from Lofa.
Right,
Like Michelle,
and that's a fair observation.
it's a fair observation. Like Michelle Obama will say, these are two highly educated, competent people who happen to be Black people. These are 3, 4 highly competent Liberians, 3 of them who happen to be people from Lofa. Yes, you will argue politically, well, does this make sense for the president to pick these people for critical roles in the economic management of the country who all come from one county? Now, that is a political question. In terms of their qualification, in terms of experience, in terms of what they bring on the president's team, I have no reservations for these four gentlemen.
Thank you. Tom, yeah, you can come in. Let's have an open discussion here.
Yeah, I think one thing to clarify is that the NPA is
yes.
No. Beside him being not from Lufa, he's not part of the economic management team.
No, I didn't add him to the economic management team. I'm saying
no, to Dennis.
Yes, okay, you're right. Technically, he's not part of the economic management team, but he speaks in terms of raising revenue and helping
the gateway to our economy.
Yeah, it's the gateway to the economy, so you can't minimize that.
Right. So I mean, even the economic management team is basically the Minister of Finance, the central bank governor, I think the senior economic advisor to the president, and then the Liberia Revenue Authority.
Right.
So even that composition, there are some questions around it. I mean, from the perspective of economic governance, because normally people think that the central bank is autonomous. It deals with monetary policy issues. So it should not really be brought into an economic management team that brings both the fiscal, the monetary, and the revenue component together. So even in Ghana and other places, it's a big debate, but even the president of Ghana normally does it. But in many instances, when these economic management teams are appointed, they are normally during crisis. Like you have a crisis and you want to handle the crisis, so you bring them together. But they are not perpetual bodies, because the argument against their composition is that these are already institutions that have mandates to be able to deliver on. So why do you have to bring them together? Because it might be the case where the Minister of Finance will prevail on the central bank governor to take a monetary policy position, which might help the government, but independently, the central bank might not want to do it. So I think the composition across different governments in different countries, I mean, it happens, but the jury is still out there, whether the central bank should be brought into that fold or whether there should be an economic management team at all. But I think the other side of the argument is that it's almost like right now, the president set up a committee for funding rules, right? So it's already institutions that have mandates to be able to deliver in the rural sector. You bring them together to be able to improve coordination. But on the issue of the port, I think there are reforms that are coming beyond just what is happening at the NPA. We spoke about this the other time, trying to make the other ports to be autonomous so that they themselves can be able to grow. Because right now you have the NPA head, who happens to be simultaneously the head of the port in Sino, in Grand Bassa, and in Maryland. So they are trying to detach the other ones to just be able to create competition around them and have a regulatory entity to run the regulatory side of the different ports. But back to the issue of discussion, I think what the president is trying to do, like Ahmed said, is really tap the best of our best so that we can be able to really grow the economy and move it forward. Because the biggest issue in the country...
Is it coincidence that the best are from Lofa?
No, I mean, there are people from all over, but let's say, for instance,
LRA, CBL.
No, one second. Now let's go to MFDP, for instance. There are people there, but if you want to compare the past 20 years, who in our financial sector have reached to the level that GAF reached, it's only American that you can compare to him, who happens now to be in the Senate. So Doug made the point earlier. Maybe you could give an opportunity to other people to come up. Just like in 2008 when Manasseh tapped Gafwan. Everybody said he didn't have experience, but she selected him from director as budget to Ministry of Finance. You could also do the same to some young economists that are coming up. But if the priority is on experience, then the two of them that were running head to head, Amara at the World Bank, he at the African Development Bank, and Amara goes to the Senate. Then at that level, Gaff and maybe a few other presidents. There could be other people in the diaspora, but they might not be in that development cycle. So I think it's not only picking from Lofa, but it's actually picking. They come from Lofa, but yet they are competent to be able to do the job.
Can I say something before I fall asleep? No, I'm not falling asleep. I'm listening. But definitely, I want to go back to that question about the Minister of Finance and Development Planning. I think we should really examine, think about the probably separate, go back to the old system where development is really development agenda. You do research, you do projections, you do other things. It's not linked to, the Minister of Finance is like a big check writing place. If you ask most Liberians, that's what they do. They write check to people, they pay people. Nobody knows what else they're doing. They don't make projections. They don't say, oh, these are the number of employees in the country. These are, all these things that are supposed to be done by the planning ministry to plan things for the government are not done really. The ministry is just writing checks. So maybe, we should consider, maybe you should talk to chair to bring that idea back and then maybe separate them and then create the Ministry of Planning and Social Development or something that do something more theoretical, not so much, managerial thing like the finance ministry does, but something really theoretical that do research, find things, and then give numbers, and then you have the what is it? Legis probably join the Ministry of Planning. Legis could be part of the Ministry of Planning, and that would be something that they could all do together.
Just to clarify, though, there was no merger between Ministry of Planning and Economic Affairs and the Ministry of Finance. There was a dissolution of this institution, and a whole brand new institution was created by an act of the legislature. And this was kind of
I know that. I was there, but what I'm saying, it looks like they function since then. Since Amara left, since Amara been there, since he left, we all know the ministry is doing the same old ministry thing, writing checks. We don't see research. We don't see anything on the media that, this is what government position is on these economic issues, except, finance, we got money, we don't have money. So why keep them there? I mean, yeah, I understand the theory, but, we say Minister of Finance. Development come later on. We say the Minister of Finance, we don't say Minister of Development. So therefore, the problem is still there. I mean, the problem is there. We're lacking that aspect of research and development.
Thank you. Let me welcome William Gibson, who's just joined us. William, welcome. We are discussing what kind of government is President Boakai trying to run here, and we're looking at right now the return of Augustine Kwehi Gafon at the Finance Ministry. We see Double Jala at LRA and the CBL NPA. So looking at those areas, what kind of economic policy, what is driving these things as to where Boakai is hoping to take the country? What are your thoughts?
Thank you again for the invitation. Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. Based off the question you just asked me, I can say I'm not quite sure. I think the main thing is just focused primarily from what I've seen in a lot of these cabinet meetings he's been having is just really trying to get at raising the revenue up to get to that 1 billion mark that he's been trying to push. But I'm hoping that the people that he's put in place continue to yield results, especially when it comes to the incoming Minister of Finance. He has, from what I've read, a great track record when it comes to doing a lot of innovative financial management practices. He's done quite a bit from his stint that he served in Madame Salouf's government in 2010. So hopefully he'll bring some changes and bring some of that true developmental research arm to the institution, as Dr. Duke was alluding to earlier. But I think the verdict still stands on what the Boakai administration hopes to achieve when it comes to their economic agenda, because we haven't really seen much of innovation that has occurred. I think they continue to still reach out to borrow, right? But instead of looking at different avenues to be more innovative in terms of making an approach to more businesses or corporations that could potentially bring in more employment to the country, I think there needs to be a focus in that area as well, as opposed to just reaching out to receive donations from places like IMF and World Bank.
Thank you. And Dr. Douglas, let me add this one, because the CBL, those are the CBL. And there was an audit that said that Gafon, for instance, is in default of $5,000. And the acting CBL governor is also owing the country, is in default of $90,000. So when President Boakai put these people in position,
acting deputy for operations.
Yeah, the acting deputy for operations. Yeah. So if President Boakai put these people in position, is he looking at accountability, or really if they owe money or not? If they defaulted on loan, it doesn't matter.
Well, I can't speak for Boakai. I will make sure that.
What do you think he's thinking? He's thinking that this is not a big deal?
No, I'm too young to know what Boakai is thinking. I would say maybe if I were him, I would say you got to clear this before you do anything in the government. I mean, if you roll I think Gafon is $5,000 something, and I think he has 10 times past the amount. He could have paid that. That's it's kind of irresponsible not to pay your debt. I mean, if you're in the U.S., you will not get that job. Definitely not. Nobody will appoint you to the reserve if you owe central bank $10,000 and you have not paid, especially if you are not paid. I mean, you can owe people. No, there's no reason not to. I mean, there's no problem with it. People owe. Everybody owe money. In the U.S., everybody lives on credit, but you have to maintain it. You have to pay the 10 or 5% that you have to pay every month to say, yes, I owe you. I don't have the money to pay all, but I'm paying small. That means your confidence, the confidence in you. So with that, he couldn't buy a house in the U.S. if he had defaulted on $5,000 for 5-6 years. He couldn't buy a house in the U.S. So yeah, that's a problem. I don't know what Boakai is thinking. Maybe we'll say, okay, it doesn't matter. He'll pay down the line. But again, that's the problem we have. Not, being accountable. Not expecting people to be accountable. Not forcing people to be accountable when they're supposed to be. You're not, if you owe the government or you owe the central bank, that's not just it's a private bank. The central bank of the government, the Liberian government, you owe money, you pay. Especially you got a bigger job for 5-6 years. You had $20,000 a month. Pay $500 a month, you'll have paid by now. But it's irresponsibility. That kind of, there's some part of irresponsibility in that, in defaulting and not paying. I know people, sometimes you don't have money to pay, you don't pay, but he had the money to pay.
Right. Tom, and thank you for that correction. Is the deputy who owed it $90,000, and then the actual acting governor, was running IB Bank, and we don't know where that bank is now. So also, should people really be borrowing from the central bank as individuals and owing central bank?
I thought only institution could borrow from the central bank.
Right. So our finance minister is in default, owing the central bank. What is he doing borrowing from central bank?
You're not supposed to.
I think these central bank loans are individual staff loans. I mean, if you go through the other report, and much of those who had worked at the central bank before, they even take loans to buy vehicles. So
but he wasn't working. Gafon
wasn't working. When Gafon came from the US with his masters, he went back to the central bank. So he had graduated from the University of Liberia when the central bank was created, I think around 1999. They had this program where when you graduate, all of the top students that come up with high scores in economics and accounting, they will absorb them. So that's how GAF entered the...
loan was 2018, right?
No, by 2018, he was no longer there.
Right, but that's the loan. They took the loan 2018 or 2019 somewhere there.
No, that cannot be. That cannot be possible. No individual takes a loan from the central bank. The only individual loans the central bank can give is those who work there as staff.
Employee,
That's as employees. So that
Yeah,
loan
as an
should.
employee, but
Yes.
he got the money.
No. I agree to the point that Dak is making. I'm just clarifying that it couldn't have been 2018, 2019. Because nobody, even the president, cannot walk into the
But
central bank and say,
that was the date though. That was before he went to the African Development Bank.
do we know the payment schedule? Whether he
No, it's
actually
in default.
defaulted?
It's in default according to the report.
no,
So,
according to the report, they all defaulted. And then on the
Yeah.
issue of the acting, the central bank even wrote a release and said that if they match the debt against his sovereign pay that they have for him, the bank is even owing him. So I'm saying, why is the central bank doing this? Somebody took money they needed to pay, and it comes out in other report. Then you can't say, "Oh, we already got money for the man," and we calculate it against the debt we owe him.
Yeah.
Then he does not even need to pay us. But that does not negate the fact that he defaulted.
Right.
Yeah.
You are only trying to cover it up by saying you got insurance benefit or you got a sovereign pay for him.
So why is President Boakai appointing these people?
I mean, I think that's
what is he trying to accomplish here? It's like accountability doesn't matter.
It should, and that's why even others have been calling on or GAF to pay the money. Just go ahead and pay the money and clear the 5,000 or 6,000 that you owe.
Plus interest.
Yeah, I mean, the bank should calculate the interest for the past maybe 10, 15 years and see how that can be paid. And then the deputy should also be able to pay that because these are financial institutions. And you know, the greatest asset of the financial sector is trust.
Right.
So it's only on trust that the whole financial system is built on. So the point is, if you
the way to make money is interest.
Yeah. So the point is, if you take money today and you take money today and say, I'm going to pay back as a staff, and then you leave for a couple of years and you don't pay back, then where is the trust? So I think all of them should be able to clear that up. They have already been appointed. They will go for confirmation. They will take this seat. But I think it's good to be able to clear it out so that public or respond to it. It's not only domestically, but even internationally, that all the ministers' name is in the central bank audit report is not good. But I just wanted to take 30 seconds to go back to the point that was raising on the structure of these different entities. So, like you mentioned, LSGIS should actually is the one that is responsible for our national accounts. So when it comes to things like GDP forecasting and all of that, LSGIS should be doing it. Why they don't do it for whatever reason, nobody knows. Sometimes you talk to them, they will say, okay, we don't have the funds to be able to do it. Things like even forecasting our jobs, how many jobs we created and all of that. LSGIS is the statistical house. They should be able to do that. And that's why they were initially part of the Ministry of Planning, but they were extracted and made LSGIS. Then development planning was taken to Finance Ministry. And I'm saying this because even as GAF is coming back, we hope he will really come back to elevate this issue of development planning. Because development is you got the money.
Is that the mandate President Boakai giving him? You know
what? No, President Boakai doesn't have to give it to him. It's in the act that created the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. President Boakai doesn't need to tell him. If you go through the regulation for the PFM law, it states that every ministry agency that uses government money, you need to have a strategic plan. When the National Development Plan is developed for the next 5 years, they all need to develop plans to say, this is how I will support the National Development Plan. It has to be there. But we just have this situation where people just dish out money to these ministries and agencies, and they don't really have any plan to guide what they are going to do. And then the other issue is that when planning used to be separate, you can do all of your research work, you do all of your planning, but if it is not linked to the budget process, then all the plans will just be sitting on the shelf. Nothing happens to it. Ministry of Planning is doing her own research and work and doing the long-term planning. Ministry of Finance is dishing out the money without talking to them. So that's the reason why they were brought together. And whether it's in Uganda, in Ghana, in Rwanda, these are the way the developed ministries are looking on the continent. So my bigger question is, why is it working in other countries and it don't work in Liberia? So the solution should not be to separate them again. The solution is to make the Ministry of Finance to do the work it needs to do.
Mr. Salif, I want us to conclude on this. Even if Mr. Gaffon or the deputy CBA governor pay the money, will that matter anymore, or the reputational damage has been done that President Boakai did not consider these people in default and put them in position of trust? Will repaying their loan matter?
Well, I don't know if what the vetting process is. Whether the president has a process in place, I imagine he does, and they do.
Right. And
Where
you think what that vetting process will be looking at?
all of
Would
these
it
things.
consider
I
default?
mean, our country is reputational, right? Like we know Mr. Gaffon's reputation, we know his competence and his track record, what he's done at the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Budget Bureau, and now at the African Development Bank. And so the president is looking for serious professionals and talents to come to help him run the country. Of course, Gaffon is a strong contender. Loans and such financial matters are private matters, really. You want, all of us have loans, in different shades and grades, and you want to be able to service your loan, your financial obligations. If you don't, and you are appointed as a public official, it comes out, it's an embarrassment to you, it's an embarrassment to the government. Now, now we're dragging the president's name in there, we're even questioning processes, right? So, what I urge in that is really, it matters that they pay back, of course. That's why I was asking, what are the loans actually defaulted? What's the repayment schedule like? Is it just interest? We don't know all the nitty-gritties and circumstances around this. All we know is there's reports that Mr. Gaffon defaulted on loans, and so the other, the deputy for operations at CBL. They should pay, but I think it's a difficult lesson already. That any such high officials, there should be real thorough vetting and thorough investigation of their background, because you don't want other issues to emerge that could be embarrassing to the government and the president.
Thank you, William. I want you to conclude on this. So, based on what we've discussed, so what do you think is President Boakai's economic philosophy? What is his economic doctrine? What is his financial philosophy based on what we've discussed so far? What does he want? Okay, if you can figure that out too, that's fine.
I honestly cannot. I would say, even the documents that were published, I don't know if there were much during his campaign, as far as the agenda of, for arrest and all of that. I didn't really see a lot of full detail to really, map out what the first year was going to look like, or the halfway mark into 6 years. None of those things were really mapped out. So I can't really speak to it. I don't know, but all I know, he's been pushing for this $1 billion revenue generation to boost, the overall revenue and everything. So I'm not too sure.
I think Boakai is focused on money, finding money. As you say, as you just said it. He's trying to find money. That's his biggest problem now.
Beyond that, though, Dennis, we've been hearing the president talk about making Liberia work. Why other countries are working, the Liberia is not working. And the way he's doing that, of course, the arrest agenda, but he's talking about connecting all county capitals, all counties in the country.
That's talk, right? That's talk.
No, that's not just talk. Let's be realistic, right? When they make mistakes, we will point it out. When they are on the right trajectory, we should also point out. And we should, and I appreciate that you're asking the questions, the hard questions, and we're looking for indicators. We're looking for evidence to say, well, here's what tells us what the president is thinking. The president thinks that the country is not working. The corruption, impunity, and lack of accountability is hampering the country. The government is not providing the basic social services to citizens: education, healthcare. You're looking at the quality of education. You're looking at all the things the government should be providing. It's now why we have countries in the region, the same portfolio, sort of similar level. They're making a lot of progress, and we're not. We should be asking ourselves, what is wrong with us? How can we fix us before we fix Liberia? Because a lot of people who go to public sector who go there with the intention of really enriching themselves for personal aggrandizement. The president is trying to correct that. We see that and hear that his public statements and his actions.
Thank you.
So Dennis,
That takes us to another issue on
Dennis, let me.
Can I add something to that? I mean, from his actions, you can't really tell either what he's really trying to get at in terms of holding these people accountable. When it comes to asset declaration, a lot of people from the previous documents that were published through FBA, Front Page Africa, a lot of them have not declared the assets. So when you're talking about some of those things of holding his people accountable in his cabinet, I don't see that either.
But at least he has put in place a committee, right, to do that. Yes, they started off, made some mistakes. They've gone back.
The asset recovery team.
The asset recovery, yes, the asset recovery
we still
team.
count that committee.
I do. They're actually working. I mean, they're quiet. They made mistake. They said, okay, let's go back, work more quietly, fix all the legal loopholes, and make sure that when we come out, we're successful. My understanding is that's where they are. I mean, there are a number of things that this president is moving on, at least from my vantage point. I think that they're bold steps. If you can continue on that trajectory, we'll be changing some things that people don't think are changeable.
So are you saying that he's doing things we don't know?
Exactly.
No. I want to know the asset recovery thing. We all know. We criticize them, the mistakes they made, right? Signing executive orders to establish office.
No. When he said he's taking some bold steps.
I made a statement. Maybe it was too broad. I'm willing to put in some meat a little bit. Maybe that will vindicate me, right? Things that I see as indicators. You put together. You recognize that people come to government and steal, basically, and appropriate public resources for personal aggrandizing purposes, and you want to retrieve those, whether they're liquid finances or real property and so on. So the president sets up a committee to look into that. They made errors, yes. They've gone back. Hopefully, they're working. And then you sign executive orders to try to address
nothing from them so far except the leaked letter that they were trying to search President Weah's house.
Dennis, that means they're there. They're working. Okay. My understanding is that committee is not dissolved as we speak. And then you sign an executive order to address impunity. You're establishing an office that will lead to war and economic crimes court. That's something you're moving in that, in a direction that others haven't done. We didn't see other presidents act on that. And when you focus on real major capital investment rules and things like that, I think those are bold things. If you can tackle electricity, energy, roads, and corruption, the president will have a massive legacy, in my view. The question is the team that will get him there, the talents that will get him there. Is it the right mix of people?
So,
and that's the major question, and that's the question I want us to really, the talent, what will get us there? Is he? Anyway, Tom, go ahead. I want us to move on to the next one.
I think when you listen to the president, when the president speaks, I listen to him carefully. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and also listen to what he does.
Right. So this is where it becomes difficult to be able to really figure out whether his intents will be achieved, because we have had many shows to be able to talk about the limitations that he has, the mistakes that they have made over the past or 7 months, right? But if you just take things that he's saying, he says, for instance, this my regime is not going to be about, it's not focusing on the next election, but it's focusing on the next generation, right? That is a very bold statement. I listened to him once.
How is he backing that up?
One second. He was on a trip to, I think, to Bomi, and he passed kids that were walking on the side of the road going to school. And he was talking about, hey, why should these kids be walking these long distances to be able to get to school? That we should increase the number of schools to make sure that people don't have to walk these long distances to go to
Tom,
school.
I'm not trying to interrupt. So, that's the problem. For the past 40 years, there's been no public high school in Monrovia. Tottenham High is dilapidated, and you are complaining children are walking. What are you doing? You can't even whitewash the building?
That's where I'm coming to. That my issue is, how It's the intents. Like he said, I think every time John Molo goes on the media, he asks him, what do you really want to take Liberia? He said, Ghana is moving forward, other countries are moving forward, and he said Liberia is going to be that final destination. So the statements he's making are profound. But those statements and the wishes that the president has, they have to be translated through the governance process. And this is where the structure of the government comes in. To be very frank, with the way the government was constituted after the elections, there are people who were put in some places, and we made some posts about it, some deputy minister for administration, and that these were people who did not have the capacity, and like Doc said, they should actually be on their way to school. So my major issue here is that the president has all these good intentions. He really need to push his team further. We have heard about this issue of signing a performance bonds with them. We haven't seen that materialize, because if you can't tie these people to achieving results, and this is where the Ministry of Finance comes in, because you are releasing the resources. So the president really needs to make sure that everyone he's appointed to any position hold them accountable for results, so that they can be able to achieve those results that he's talking about. Having LBS reach to all the county capitals, it's not going to happen by just saying it. It will only happen if you can generate the resources for it, you budget for it, and you make sure the resources are gathered in such a way that they are used for their intended purposes. So I think the intents are good, but those intents need to be translated, and it cannot be translated only by himself. He will have to hold everyone accountable to translate his wishes into what he wants to see for Liberia.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday, and we are talking tough. Let's look at the LDEA. In June, I think it was on June 3rd that we saw what obtained at the LDEA with Mr. Kromai's two deputies fighting. Since then, the president suspended them. And in my view, I work in a group home for many years. That would take a 3-day investigation. Why is it going for months? And why the 3 leaders are away, the LDA is making a complete boo-boo, right? They went to search a community. I don't know which search warrant would not specify a building, but would specify a community, right? Got a search warrant outside the jurisdiction of the place they're supposed to get it from. In fact, the clerk said they stole it from him. None of the judges denied signing it. And when the LDA acting, or the officer in charge appeared on one of our sister network, he minimized it, even though people almost died as a result of the recklessness of the LDEA. So far, President Boakai has not been able to come up with the verdict or any action since they were suspended almost 3 months ago. And what they are doing, President Weah now is seizing upon that and taking President Boakai to the ECOWAS Commission. Say, this man is targeting us. Based on that, what is Boakai trying to do here, Dr. Dukley? Is he the rule of law president? Is he trying to, or is it a complete wild west that is taking place at the DEA? And what I've noticed is all these drugs being being taken and burned. I don't know if they are catching people and putting them in jail.
Well, I would say, the DEA issue is unfortunate that it's taking this long. I mean, I'm sure he knows. It doesn't take, I should say, it doesn't take 3 days to know who did what. It doesn't take 3 or 4 days to know when people can work together. I remember that was LTA. Madame Salif asked me one time to go talk to them because it was, Bropley and Warite and Mrs. Japa. I went to talk to them for 2-3 days. I came back. I said, Madam, these people don't want to work together. And then she called them. She said, so you guys say you can't work with the chairman? And the chairman said, you can't work with you? You say, no. So she gave them papers. Say, okay, all of you write your letter of resignation before you leave the office. Say, Madam, say, no, if you don't, I'll fire you. So I think when people can't work together, you just let them go. Because I'm not even in favor of suspending people in the government office. If you do something bad that is not with you, in your line of work, you're not supposed to do it, you do something illegal, we just fire you. You don't suspend government officials. It's not a high school. I know Madam Salif did it, but it's not a high school. You say, oh, you're suspended for 2 days. Come back. Because once you're suspended as a leader, you come back as a small person. You don't come back as the same boss in the same environment. It takes something away from you. So I'm not in favor of, these kind of things, suspending people and calling them back. I think you should find somebody new or just send Mr. Kroma, AB Kroma back and then send Hassan someplace else and then restructure the whole place. But so far, with the incident at the CDC headquarters, maybe the guy wanted to show his face. Say, hey, Mr. President, you remember the DEA? So he did something at 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody woke up, and then there's a big crisis at the national level. Now we know there's somebody there, and now we know there's a leadership crisis. Maybe that's what he wanted to do. But I don't know what Boakai is waiting for. But maybe, he's also, I think Boakai is focused on very few things, and that may be his, weakness, that he's focusing too much on few little things. But he forget that the presidency administration is everybody, from the janitor to So some of the things happen, and then he doesn't seem to pay attention, or they're not brought to his attention, or he's not doing anything about it. But then again, it comes back to this question: Boakai has good ideas, but are they translated into reality in governance?
And we've not heard, since this happened at the CDC headquarters, we've not heard from President Boakai.
Well, yeah, he hasn't spoken. I don't think he's held a press conference since he became president. No.
Oh, yes. He has spoken to the press, that Duke. He's been to
No. I mean, he talked to the press by calling a press conference to open it, like 1 hour, 2 hour talking. That's what I'm talking about. No, he talked, occasionally he talked to people when he say 1 or 2 words and then he passed by. I know his way of talking to the press. It's not too much into the media, and that's a problem in this era of social media. You got to, as a president, you have to talk. You know what you remember Talbot for all these big, Snapchat ideas that he gave us every single day. Although he didn't do much, but people still remember him because he talked. He talked. He inspired people. He said, "This is what we need to do. This is where we need to go. But he showed it. So Baka is a different person. So we have to see, and I still think that this is a thank you cabinet. People who help with the election, he's thanking everybody for a year or two, and then he's gonna let them go, and then he's gonna go into his own real agenda.
Who is he thanking at the DEA?
Well,
the place is on fire.
Well, DEA would, I think he's going to find somebody new to put there. Somebody totally new.
Mr. Gibson, the mess at the DEA, what does it tell us about where Boakai is leading the country when it comes to fighting crimes, it comes to fighting drugs and the rule of law?
I think, like Dr. Duke stated earlier, there may be some other things he's prioritizing over that, but it also is contradictory because when he took over in, I think, his inaugural speech and even in his speech to the legislature, the address on the State of the Nation, he said that drug was a epidemic that he wanted to take care of, a public enemy number one. So to see you not prioritizing a unit that should be going out in the field to combat some of these issues with what drug is doing to the nation, from the young to the old, everybody is being affected, but you're still taking so long to review what the findings were in this investigation. It says that he is either still thinking or he has not made a true decision yet because he doesn't want to move on it without finding out more facts. But how many more facts can you find out if the investigation has been done? I mean, we've seen investigations done with everything else that's been going on, and the investigations are still behind closed doors, the findings of those investigations. So it's not sending a good message that this is somebody who's prioritizing what was considered public enemy number one when he had his State of the Nation address. It doesn't send a clear message that he's trying to combat it. So hopefully he'll make some moves on it. And like Dr. Duke said, get rid of both parties, because at the end of the day, you've tainted the image of the institution by bringing two individuals in who could not solve issues in an amicable manner, but they wanted to involve ego. When your egos are involved, you're not thinking about the greater good of the institution that you're serving. So that creates a lot of whole type of splits that doesn't need to occur. You have one faction that's supporting this side and the other. So what good would it do to bring somebody else back who was selected to return, and then the other faction members are still there who are loyal to that one individual that was dismissed? It doesn't send a clear message. So dismiss both of those.
Actually, when you think about it, though, his chief bodyguard, Sam Gay. Sam Gay is a USDA agent trained. He started working in DC and was head of USDA for the sub-region in Africa for almost 15 years. And they sent him in to be, chief bodyguard at, EPS. He would be the perfect person to sit down and say, recreate that agency, give it, the space he needs, and then give it all the power he needs, because he done it. He done it in Nigeria. He done it for the whole West African continent.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Duke said, you're giving out favors when it comes to these positions. I think a lot of this is just being done by, I'll appoint you here because there's no space at this entity you wanted to lead. And it's all favors that's being handed out through positions, but you don't have time to waste. You can't.
No, you don't have time.
Your first year off, giving out favors in these positions is not cash payouts. This is real work that needs to be done. When we talk about moving the nation in a steady direction to where you can leave and have a lasting legacy, where people can say, yeah, this president was focused on results. It was not just through the speeches. It was through the actions that he took. So what deeds are being done right now? It doesn't send any clear message that actions will follow what he's been saying in the media in no way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but can I add something before I move? I want to do something, but I want to say something though. I think we also DEA is the agent to fight the drugs, but fighting drugs is not just DEA. There's a whole social programming that we need to think about. Mm-hmm. And that is not the DA, just like the police aspect of it. The police who arrest people, seize the drugs, but there's a moral issue. I think Salif talked about it earlier, that moral transformation issue that we need to face in the country. Why people so corrupt? It's almost pathological. It's not healthy. There's some disease, something. People will say, you've been friends with the biggest country in the world for 200 years and you're still the poorest country in the world. Something wrong with you.
Something wrong. Mr. Kane, President Boakai took the drug test to demonstrate how serious this issue is. I think it was yesterday when he was at the ministerial complex to participate or launch what they call the National Street Children Project, right? And our good friend Sam keep referring me to speeches, right? Oh, President Boakai made this speech. It was good. He said this. But what are the actions to back these speeches up when it comes to fighting drugs, right? We talk about Sam Gay being would be very right, a good person for that, but yet he had A.B. Krumah, who his deputy are accusing that he himself is doing drugs and is in deal with drug dealers. All these kind of things are going on. What is President Boakai, what is his direction when it comes to fighting drug or the drug pandemic? What is he doing? What is he trying to accomplish here?
I think if there was a singular issue that made President Boakai to win this election,
experience.
And outside his experience, if there is a singular policy issue, like here, the US is going to election and you see inflation, right? In Liberia, if drug was not number one, it might have been number 2 or number 3. That was an issue that the Unity Party really took up, especially when we had this $100 million drug issue. It came to the country and every day there was something happening at the port, at the borders and all of that. So this government, what I'm saying is that they really won on the back of promise to the Liberian people that they were going to rigorously fight drugs. And this issue with drugs, Liberia is not an isolation. It's the entire sub-region. Even in Sierra Leone, in other countries, in Senegal, it's a major issue. So I think coming from that background, if you listen even to the vice president, every time he made a statement on the campaign trail, he highlighted the issue of drugs. We saw all these videos of people, hitting their heads against the light posts and all of that. So then the president comes from there. He declares drugs, like William was saying, as a public health issue. I think they even set up a committee, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Gender, and all these different agencies, and put them together to be able to actually fight drugs. And then we saw pictures of them going to Bentor, looking at places where they are going to build homes to take these people off the street. But the point I keep making about the issue of planning and developing strategies, you are not going to fight drugs by only increasing the budget of the LDEA. And this was the way it came out to be in the budget process. Oh, you give LDEA more money. But LDA has no skills in mental health issues, for instance. They will go and raid the ghetto. They will arrest the people that are there. But where do you put them next? How do you rehabilitate them? Can this be a public-private partnership with people who have their rehabilitation homes? Can the government partner with them? But this is only going to happen when you can draw up a clear strategy to lead us through this process. So what is happening at the LDA is quite unfortunate. We talk about it a lot. What I really don't understand is, for instance, you have people in the legislature who are elected. Clearly a sedition. The other person is from UP. This other person is from ANC. But they can manage in all the noise that they make. Sometimes they even want to fight, but they can manage to do things regardless of how good or bad it is. But then people on the executive side, they appoint you, the same president appoints you. And then you go in the office, you start to fight among yourselves. So I think what is happening at the LDA is really undercutting what the president said he was going to do to fight drugs. And then the OIC that is also there, listening to his interview on the other platform, it wasn't encouraging, because all of these entities do have legal sections. So how can you go and get a warrant? Did your lawyers not go through it to be able to verify whether this needed to be signed at this level by this person? Or the court where you got the warrant is even the jurisdiction where you are going to do the raid? And then he started talking, we are reviewing it, we want to learn from it. I mean, I know him to be someone, I think he's either in the law school or graduated from the law school. But what the LDA did under this OIC,
so he graduated from the law school?
I think he's either in the law school or he has graduated.
He doesn't know how to get the warrant.
I was
he didn't even get a warrant.
I was
He
very
doesn't know how to read a warrant.
For me, I was very disappointed with the hell of the court saying he didn't sign, and then they said they took it from clerks and all of that. Why do you want to do such a major raid that is politically sensitive?
And Tom, what does that say about President Boakai? He has not said anything. He didn't fire anybody.
No, the point here is, we normally say the boss stops with the president.
Exactly.
It stops with the president. But let's also go to these individuals, man.
Yeah, we talked about them already. That's pure incompetence. But what's about President Boakai? What is he doing?
This is why he needs to come in and resolve this issue at the LGEA. There were some signals that the report on AB Kroma and his two deputies are on his decks. There was
almost 3 months.
Yes.
What else do we looking for? What is he looking for?
Well, there was an expectation, and this is where tomorrow ends the working week. There was an expectation that he was going to take action this week. The more he does not take decision to be able to have a team at the LGEA to do their work, a fully constituted team, the more we are losing a battle against drugs. So I think now that the boss stops with the president, he needs to take decision on this issue and be able to move it forward. But to me, I think it is not the investigation that is difficult. It is the political connection of those people involved. How they contributed to the election, who contributed more of their friend. This person came from this background and supported us becoming president. I think that's where the decision making is complex. And that's where the president needs to get over and put the country ahead of these individual interests.
Mr. Salif, they used to have a joke about President Salif that if anytime she wanted to kill something, she put it in a committee. She said a committee and that's it. Mm-hmm. Right? Now,
that's the Tolbert game. Tolbert used to.
Now President Boakai will set up a committee on DEA and there's nothing. What does this say about President Boakai? Really? Because can we call him out that he's being very ineffective when it comes to the drug war?
No, I think, look, there are several issues at play here. Yes, the buck stops with the president, and the buck has always stopped with the president. But we tend to.
He almost it.
No, I wouldn't say that. Well, look, we always drive everything and blame it on the president. If you, and you know, if you are assigned or appointed to an important office and you make strategic errors and you don't know how to own up to it, how to really fix it and get the job done, that is a problem that the individual who is the leader of that office also needs to be held accountable for that. I mean, people
Agree.
resign for these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
If there's a big fiasco like that, you cannot have a warrant as what we've read and heard, even the interview the OIC himself did, just gives a lot out to us that was a problematic warrant, or wasn't probably a warrant at all. However, law enforcement officers of the DEA were operating under the assumption of having sufficient warrant to act, having the authority to act, right? And that thing went, sort of the way it did. There are a number of issues at play here. Citizens who themselves are involving, resorting to violence, just taking matters into their own hands, peddling rocks and throwing things. Yes, there are constitutional questions. That's why you get a warrant. In the criminal procedure, they will tell you that, right? It's a very tight thing that law enforcement people do. There's a whole process, is invasion of privacy, people constitutional rights, and so on. But what I saw with that whole CDC headquarters fiasco, a lot of us, our people, the first thing you hear, even politicians, they start to threaten the peace. They start to bring this thing as though people should just live with impunity and in impunity, that nobody should be held accountable. When you try to enforce something, they say, look, just because we're quiet doesn't mean that LDA or the government alone has monopoly over violence, and we want to keep the peace. It shouldn't be that way.
But
Yes,
Mr. Salim, the FDA action was completely lawless, right?
well, I mean, you would say, yeah. I mean, if the warrant was illegal,
I don't want to
hold on,
believe.
Dennis, I'm balancing it here now. I recognize that. I said they ought to be held accountable. They ought to have proper warrant. That people have the right, the constitutional right to be respected, right to privacy. You can't go and invade somewhere when you didn't have the proper legal search and warrant, search and seizure authority to go there. That was the first point I made. The second point is too, on the other hand, these people who went outright, like just throwing stones and peddling, burning tires, is that the kind of society we want to live in, where people feel like they can take the law into their own hands and then threaten the peace and say, well, you can't carry my guilt to LCC. We will, LSC, we will, a troop of CDC loyalists will come and they'll create disturbances. No, it shouldn't be like that. Yes, on the one hand, LGA and the law enforcement authority do the right thing, follow the proper procedure, because rule of law starts with them. That's why we call them law enforcement officials and officers, right? They're officers of the law in that sense. On the other hand, citizens who take matters into their own hands and threaten peace and create disturbances also should not believe that impunity is the way that our society functions. So it's really a thing of questioning both sides. And then the other,
No, sir, excuse me, sir. I don't think so, though. I think that on the one hand, I think we're talking about the DA issue and the president's response to the chaos that is going on in there, and the fact that they fight on drugs a bit. But the reaction of the CDC goons, I mean, those guys are violent. We know that. And that was a CDC typical reaction into any political
but should we
situation.
accept that? That's my
No,
point.
no, no, we don't accept it. No, we don't
Precisely.
accept it. And I was, somebody was saying the other day, if you in the US, the police come to your house, you start throwing stone at them, they'll shoot you.
Yeah.
And nobody will talk. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's Liberia, we pretend that, I'm totally agreeing with you on that side. I just wanted to separate the two. They're not one is a provocation, one is just a stupid reaction. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
one. I
doing.
mean,
So,
if you executed an illegal warrant or you didn't have a warrant at all, yes, that amounts to provocation of sort. At the same time, what we see as this lawlessness that really mar everything that happens is something that is our society has to. No, there are multiple things we're conflicting here, right? Dr. Dupler, you mentioned earlier about the social policy side of things. Yes, law enforcement, you go and raid and seize, these drugs and paraphernalia and whatever, arrest people, detain and so on. That's the law enforcement side. There's a process that then you have to follow them to court and all of that. That you want to respect due process. On the other hand, what do you do when you raid? I saw when I went to Zimbabwe. There's a place on SD Cooper Road where people used to congregate and they live there. And this people in the street that are called Zogo, right? They went and raided the whole place. The guy said, "Where do we go? This is where we live, and this is home for us. So now you're pushing us in the street so that we can begin to commit crimes again." So I agree with Tom. There has to be a strategy, some kind of policy. That's social policy making. Really understand that addiction component. What do you do about that? And then those who are really bringing the drugs in those who what they call them, white collar, plain suit and tie sort of people who are in the system, who are behind infesting the society with drugs. So you attack this from multiple perspectives and multiple prongs. How do you do that? It takes strategy. It takes social policy making and that kind of thing. So the tendency that we just say, the president needs to take action, that alone is not enough, because the president will appoint another person whom he believes is competent, is able to do the job, and we continue to see these kinds of chaos.
Thank you. And one thing is, we're talking about the people that are bringing the drugs. Sometimes I think I saw, to look at two, they will arrest tons of drugs and burn them, but then with no arrest, we don't see anybody who being caught. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. What kind of government is President Boakai trying to run here? If you want to take part in the conversation, call 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. It was hallelujah time for the former Chief Justice Gloria Mususcat and her family members yesterday when the Supreme Court overturned the verdict and for lack of sufficient evidence to convict them. As the prosecution team said, hey, we did this on circumstantial evidence, and a crime as grave as murder, you can't do that according to the Chief Justice, right? So Gloria Mususcat and her relative being set free because there was no sufficient evidence. Others are saying, hey, so the biggest thing is the killers of Shalom Musu, we may not know them, who they are, and they will never be brought to justice. That's the sad part. But justice itself, let's talk a little bit about that. The way people look at the case is, hey, we are saying lack of enough evidence. It doesn't mean, that you didn't do it or you did it. According to the court, lack of enough evidence to convict you. So Councillor Scott praised the ruling and said, that's good. And they want the justice system that convicted her. He said there's lack of justice. And if they can do it to me, someone who has served as Chief Justice, mean the little people are not spared. Let's look at our justice system and the justice system under President Boakai. The governance guy. Let me start with you.
And listen, a government anywhere, when a citizen has been accused of a crime, is that citizen v the state, right? That citizen against the state. So the burden of proof is on the state to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the case they brought to court, that this person, they have to prove that case really beyond reasonable doubt. So it can't be just circumstantial, like you said. I mean, that doesn't mean the accused probably they didn't commit the crime, but if the defendant, the state will have to actually prove, leaving no doubt that this defendant committed this crime, particularly a capital offense, as in this case. So if the evidence, if the conviction was just based purely on circumstantial evidence, as everybody is saying, we all just listen to different things, media reports and things like that, and follow the proceedings a little bit. So we're not privy to 100% to the entire evidence profile that the prosecution constructed during the trial. But if the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of our land, came and reviewed the matter, because usually the Supreme Court will review a decision when there's error in law, and when there's error on the part of the lower court, right? And if this is the case here, I don't know. Then that really speaks to our judicial system as a whole, from law enforcement, as we were saying, because if evidence is tainted, if law enforcement didn't do proper investigation, we don't have a forensic process, for example, to really be careful of evidence, construct evidence, gather evidence, build a case, a theory of a case, and build a case against an accused person. Then it's a problem. It's a system problem we have to fix. And then you couple that with, political meddling and sort of corruption allegations and all of that, different tiers of justice in the society. That creates a bigger problem, in my view, which is a perception problem against the judiciary, a perception problem that is not good for the society, because our society is already polarized. We're very divided. I mean, this recent election alone could just tell you how divided this society is. Something as executing a warrant at a particular place near a major opposition political party's headquarters resulted to the kinds of disturbances we saw. That tells you that this is a society that is on the brink. And so when the high court is taking decisions as sensitive as this, I would just say that we have to be careful. And if the Chief Justice was innocent, and the state just basically built or some kind of bogus case against her, then that's justice in that sense. But if there was real probable cause to believe that a crime, that she had a hand in that crime, and now she's free, then again, it could be a miscarriage of justice. I just don't know. I'm just telling you what I see as problematic, Danny.
All right.
We don't know. Dr. Duque, do you think that this overturn would have come if President Weah was still president?
Well, the way President Weah dealt with the court, I would say no. I would say it probably would have never come out, because you saw what they did, that court did with the Samkai case, what they did with the Cabinet Johnny case. Whatever, whenever they never ruled against Weah. I don't think it ever happened. If it happened, I don't remember. Maybe one or two cases of, the ambassador at the OIC didn't want to come back, and, they said, no, you got to give him his passport. No? But I don't think any major case they ever ruled against Weah. And this is like, like Ahmed said, this is like Nicole Simpson case. OJ went to jail. Got a good lawyer, got free, but the victims are still victims. Nobody's speaking for them. And this young girl died, and she died in a house. And then, I talked to Cabinet about it, because Cabinet was writing the brief. He was leading this team, the second team, the appeal team to the Supreme Court. We talked about it, and he told me that there was no way in a serious court that woman could have been, convicted, because you cannot convict three people of the same crime at the same time,
right,
without saying who did what. You can say, oh, you collectively guilty, but you don't give in detail. He said, in a criminal case, you have to have detail of evidence. You have to have your evidence. He said, but you can't just come and say, okay, the two of you were in the house. We don't have the detail, but all three of you.
Since there was no intrusion, so it's you.
There's no such thing as collective evidence. It has to be individualized.
Exactly, and that was the basis of his appeal. He was working on it when I was in Monrovia. I saw him twice, and we talked about it. And then the political aspect about justice. When you talk about this, I don't know if you remember, Dennis. I thought, when she was arrested last year, I said something about. I said, you know what? This may sound like karma, bad judgment. I shouldn't even say it, but she was part of that justice system under Taylor. where Baibala and 10 other people from the Crown community were arrested after Roosevelt Johnson case.
Mm.
They were sent to trial. After 2 days, they found them guilty, sentenced 10 years. 3-4 months later on, they appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, instead of 10 years, gave them 25 years. Who was Chief Justice? Gloria Musu-Scott. So, justice and politics, I'm glad that she found out that our justice system is bad, influenced by politics, because she did it too. She was part of that process. If people like her had stood up to Taylor, we probably would have never had a second war. So sometimes, history teaches lessons. We have to remember these things.
Thank you. Let me bring in 2 callers, and then I will get to both of you on the same thing. Our first caller here is Jeru Gibson. Gibson Jeru or Jeru Gibson? Which one?
Yes, sir. Gibson Jeru.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jeru.
Okay, thank you very much. I listened intently to the discussants, and my view has not changed since the trial. I remember twice on Spoon, I did say that the charging of Gloria Musu-Scott with murder was, in my view, because I'm not a lawyer, so probably nobody listened to me at the time, that it was not a proper way to do it. But this is what happened. Usually those who are lawyers are aware that the way to tie you to a judgment is to put you with anyone who is accused of a crime, and they try the both of you together. Now, the only way to get yourself out of it is to ask for a severance trial. The Gloria Musu-Scott did not ask for severance trial because she knew she was going to leave her children in the hot water. And if she was, she's an old judge, don't forget. If she knew that she was convicted with her children, since she was also charged with murder, it would have been difficult for the prosecution to prove at the level of the Supreme Court how she became a murderer. Because the evidence of murder, the intent to prove murder, will not lie in Gloria Musu-Scott's case. I would have thought, and I said then, that they could have charged her with criminal facilitation, because Gloria Musu-Scott definitely lied when the incident happened. She called the justice minister. She tried to cover it up. She tried to lie to the police. Those are crimes that they could have prosecuted her separately, not with the charge of murder. Unfortunately, prosecution wanted to tie all of them together and put them away for murder for a long time, and that they tried and achieved that goal. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court saw it differently. And you ask a specific question: was it going to be possible that if George Weah was still president, would the Supreme Court ruled in Gloria Musu-Scott's case? I would say absolutely no, because it was going to be very impossible for that case to even be heard immediately, because prosecution would have done all kinds of things, apply all kinds of tactics to delay that case, and probably the Musu-Scott will not even be confident to apply for a review of the case, because they thought that the judges or the Supreme Court was under the whims and caprices of the then president.
Thank you.
Now, the question that remains, Dennis, before I leave you, when the prosecution does not take a proper action, they leave the murder of the murder victim. They leave the murder victim without a culprit. Now, we don't know who killed Charlotte. So we can never know anymore who killed Charlotte, because prosecution blunder, and the people who supposed to be put away for the killing of Charlotte are all out because of the wrong prosecutorial action that it took place. So this is the problem you get when the prosecution does not act well.
Thank you. We'll never know who killed Charlotte. Boy Solo, you are next. And we have so many callers, so let's be brief.
I want to say something. Probably let me deal with the DA issue before I go to Gloria Musu-Scott case. We're going to say what we want to say, my brother. What I can tell you is that those people are making fun out of us. I will tell you, we that goes to Liberia and we got business there and we know work with people. The DEA itself they are drug sellers. Those people got a people that they collect money for every Saturday. Do you know how many also go got building on their own? If you really want to arrest drug dealers, they need to fire all the DEA officers and bring in new people. Let them before people get into that position. They can't waste their time. They will go to prison and where the drugs is where they're going to go. They will go to people who are not giving them money. What do you think the confusion break up between Fadiga and Kuma? So that's the main issue there. So we're going to talk about drugs and then we wait there our time and then we can get reform. But going to Girl Scout issue, Big Brother, is that, you know, this is another case of poor men not having justice. The poor, no justice for the poor. I recently, Big Brother, how they call it, Gibson. But let me say this. We are in America here. Let's put it this way. If you're in a house with your family or with any other person, and somebody die like that in our house, and no intruder, the first thing that people will do in this country, they will arrest you. I don't care if you throw the murder weapon away, whether that knife or that gun, but they will carry you first. That's one. Two, if they know that you have a camera at your house, and you tamper with that camera by turning that camera up, and somebody die in our house, we all know we sit there, we see it, we watch crime scene. They carry you. Because they will know that you tamper with the camera to commit that crime. Girl Mususka is not the one killed that girl. Her daughter killed that girl, and she tried to cover her daughter up because there are a lot of information came from the community that indeed that girl and Girl Mususka biological daughter been having a problem. And every time they read a fight, she gets 10 nights. So it's not strange thing. But one thing I will say before I leave the land, everybody here, we have ears and we got eyes. Girl Mususka case, the United Party people told us what they want that when it comes to power, they will release the woman. Just imagine they put it go to the court here. The whole information ministry, they were at South Beach already. They not come out with a decision yet, but they were there waiting for the woman to be released and in a t-shirt. That tell you that, indeed, I don't care what you are going to do, they were still going to free the woman. They put in the power when they did. They release the woman and say, the woman, some people feeding her teenager to her, so she must be outside. That was me. It can't happen to me. There are other people in jail. They're not getting that. So we know that it's just all from where people want to release her, so they do what they thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And she's going to get a job soon. Just watch it. In a few months, she's going to get a job.
Okay.
So the perception is government's running the justice system.
William, I wanted to add, give your comment before I bring in two more callers, you and Tom.
Yeah, I mean, this is like everyone has said that has spoken before me. I think this is a clear indication that the justice system definitely needs some reform. There needs to be definitely more investments in the area of having proper machinery to invest in when it comes to fingerprinting machines and things like that to collect evidence and to make sure evidence is stored properly in order to properly follow the due course that it needs to find out what happened in said case that has taken place, let it be a murder or rape, whatever it might be, but there needs to be some investments in those areas because it's clearly lacking on that end of collecting information and having proper evidence and things like that to really ensure that the justice system is able to put down a verdict that is truthful and not being driven politically in any kind of way or has any type of influence that is not tied to the evidence.
Thank you. Let me bring in Evers, Morris, and then after that, we'll bring in Tom. Evers, you're live. You're 1 minute.
All right. Thank you, Mr. John, and hello to the panelists. Look, when it comes to the Girl Musu thing, you know, like I said, the woman said that if the family wants justice for a daughter, it'd be that. But one of the things that limited the Liberian government in trying to solve this case, well, we are a limited, country. Not like the United States, where they will have a, exhaustive investigation, use all the latest technology, top-notch detectives who can kind of investigate that case and come up with a logical, conclusion and try to, make a case to the court. So once you don't have a murder weapon and nobody's talking, you don't have anybody, cooperating with the government, it's hard. It's hard to prove guilt, especially when, those elements are missing from the case. So, like we'll say, we feel God. But when it comes to the drug issue, like some people, like I will not say some people, like Thomas is saying on the show that, it happening in West Africa, Sierra Leone going through the same problem. When we're saying the same thing during the Kush time, when we say Sierra Leone going through the same problem, it's not just Liberia, Nigeria going through. They say no. Matter of fact, Joe, we have a person that is bringing drug in the country. He's importing drug. The man's a drug dealer. They were using it as a political tool. But now when the script is flipped, they're defending Joseph Boakai. It's hard to fight drug. It's not easy to fight drug. When we talk about this Lofa connection, they say no. But the people qualify from Lofa, but the Southeasterners, in their mind, they're not qualified. What do they know? What do Toy know that you should be finance minister? What do these other people know that they should be working in a high position in government? But when it comes to their people, they will defend it. And they will try to find excuses to tell you why the people should be in that position, even though they're from the same country, because they're qualified, but other people were not qualified. So the hypocrisy, when we see it on these platforms, we call them out. And these are educated men who are making the same elementary argument that we and the other civilians used to make in the mid-phone of us, but now they're making the same argument. So it's just a full circle thing, and we laugh at it because people can say it's hard to defend government. Yeah, and lastly, let me just say this. When it comes to, what was the other topic? Oh, the LDA. Leadership is not only about, being the president. It's about formulating a team. Some people, you can have the best players, but it may not gel well. The chemistry may not mix well. So you have to put people in positions who will work well together. Like Dr. Du just said about Sam Gay. Sam Gay, best position, football players, when they tell you they're in their best position at number 9, but you can't put them in number 6. The best position is supposed to be at LDA. You think President Boakai don't know that? With a history, if he had done proper vetting and know what this man is really good at, you don't think you would have put him to the LDA. But you're playing players out of position, and you're not going to get the desired result. And that's a true mark of a leader. You have to put the right people in the right position to deliver the desired result. And the president is not doing it. But thank you for taking my call. I will leave it right there.
Thank you. It happened to me when I was playing for BYD in Bannersville. I'm number 7, but they put me on 11 because there was no left winger. So every time I can kick with the left, but I can't drill with it, and that was a problem. But they kept me.
You get a Senate job. Don't worry. You get a superintendent job.
Yeah, we're trying. The put is
petition. We're going to send a petition around to everybody to sign.
I was supposed to hold the placards in Atlanta to say.
Yeah, you didn't remind me. I was going to hold it. Huh? Dennis, the superintendent, sign up.
Tom, you have anything to your contribution on the glorious card before I bring in the 2 other colors?
Yeah, my only contribution is let's go out there and find who committed a crime.
Yeah,
I think Jeru made that point. And like the other callers said, we all watch it over television. The problem with our country is that we don't do things deep. Everything is done at the surface. Mm-hmm. So now that, we say, the former Chief Justice, and before then, to even believe that there was no intruder, other stories were coming up that people were breaking into her car, people were following her, people were tracking her because she was the lead lawyer. So you have all these kind of stories coming up. To even say that there was no intruder, some people believe it, some people don't believe it. But the sad thing about our country is that we don't investigate anything deeply. So now that we say, they are now responsible, the bigger question that is left is who killed the girl, because she's dead. So the police, the criminal justice system still need to go further to be able to get that culprit and bring them to book. But they won't do it. After this, by next week, we are going to go to another issue.
You think President Boakai will kind of try to get that done? Everything is the president, in our country.
Yeah. And then the president do it again. We say he's running the judiciary. The judiciary is independent. They should go out there.
No, the Solicitor General, he got his the Justice Ministry, right?
That's the police, yeah. The police.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It
He
is
is
not
the
the
president.
police
So
to do.
what is President Boakai going to do about this, in your view?
I think he should ask the criminal justice system to bring the real culprit to book.
He should, yeah, the
Because
police
that's
should.
one of our citizens. She was killed. So even if it takes 5, 6, 7 years, we should be able to get to the bottom of it.
Right, and remember now, because in the death of the late Barton Yenswa, I think the police they called Samuel Tu and other people. I don't know where that is now.
Yeah, that's still being
That was
investigated.
this, yeah, CDC government investigation.
Right. So it is. I hope President Boakai or his Justice Ministry is going to follow up this case as well. Let me bring him, Mr. Flomo Livingstone. Flomo, you're live.
Yeah, Mr. John, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Great show. Look, I'll just keep on going, Mr. Stark. Yes, look, people calling there's no justice. What about the poor person who is not having justice? No, even in the great United States, everybody don't have the same justice.
Amen.
Someone rich, no, I'm telling you, Mr. John, in America, everybody don't get the same justice.
But you can always take the bad thing to compare to Liberia. When people here go on the moon, you will not say even in America they go on the moon. But go ahead.
Wait now. Look, but okay, let me go ahead. You don't want us to do the but then we should say when they in like bro, people can get justice. Then you not be fair. Because even in America, you get someone who running for president who will convict of felony. But people here who convict can vote. Is that the justice? So we can it's not in every country justice system will not be perfect. But I hope, like you said, I hope the president and the justice minister can go after whosoever murdered that young lady. We all want justice for that person. But at the same time, you don't want to keep someone there in prison, forcibly in jail because you can't find the person who did it. We shouldn't do that. Man. That's not serving justice. No, for me, the SBA, no, okay, yeah, they all agree that Mr. Jai didn't get it. The woman was wrong. Okay, yeah, we agree. But at the same time, it does not give the people or the citizens the right to go black rolls, burn tires, and throw stones at other people. It shouldn't be like that. If they see that the LGA went to the CDC compound, let them use the law, let them go through the court system. And that's the right way to go. But you can't throw stones and harm other businesses, then you call it that you're right. No, we're not living in what kind of country, we're not living in that type of country. And in America, we all know sometimes the FDA don't even need, the DA don't even need some warrant, or police don't even need warrant sometimes. When they pull you over, they feel suspicion, they can search your car. You're not telling them to go get me warrant, or we have to bring warrant to search my car. It doesn't happen like that. Maybe it was just an error, and which I believe some of the DA got them to the collide with the drug dealer in that country. So the whole system is bad. And look, the president is doing good, but I'm not saying everything is perfect. Yeah, he does some missteps. I support the president. He does some missteps. I agree to that. But he's doing some good things too.
But what's the misstep you know that he did?
What's the misstep which I would agree was the turning position, removing certain people from turning position. That was some misstep. They shouldn't have done that. If I was battling, he shouldn't have done that. He should have gone through the process. The way he did by appointing the ombudsman, at least the ombudsman should have gone through that system and try to remove those people. That's one of the missteps he did.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let me get the last caller here, and that Darling Warwood. Normally, Darling doesn't have anyway. I shouldn't preempt. Go ahead, Darling.
Thank you for having me. So, Dennis, I will stick to your first questions, which has to do with what are Boakai's economic policies, why he's playing for the country. Now that he's bringing a cousin Kafua, the so-called experienced guy. Then here's what I will say. I said it from the onset that I had no expectation of the Boakai's administration because Boakai has no record of solving problems. Over the last 45 years that Boakai has stayed in government, all Boakai did was to collect salaries and benefits. Boakai does not have record of solving problems. He has no policy statement. Boakai has never resigned from any corrupt government. In fact, Boakai is part of the problem that we are going through today. He is a benefactor of the problem that we are going through today. Boakai has worked for the last 5 corrupt governments. Okay, so how can you trust the source of your problem?
What are those 5 corrupt governments?
Boakai worked for Ellie.
1.
He was the first speaker to Ellie for 12 years. He worked for Do.
That's 2.
We all know what Do. He worked for the Sawyer administration.
3.
He worked for Tubber administration.
4.
And he's now working for his own administration.
Is that what you understand?
One thing is, Boakai is a benefactor of our suffering in Liberia.
Oh,
Boakai is part of the problem. He's part of the root causes of our problems. Boakai has no plan. Boakai did not come to the presidency with plan. He brought absolutely nothing to the presidency. Okay? And for somebody to say that, then let me say this. As we speak, Liberians are smuggling steel from Ghana because the cost of steel has skyrocketed in Liberia. Why? Because we are giving vulnerable to some Indian merchant businessman, Jetty. And Boakai came to power. These are low-hanging fruits that Boakai should be able to what? Attend to. Why is that roll back this money put it that don't we are getting to Jetty? Why is he not rolling back? Why are we buying 5.8 at 16 dollars? Is that even the correct prices? Jetty has reduced the size of the 5.8. And he's selling it, not just reduce it, he's selling it more expensive. So I'm saying this to say that Boakai has no plan because when he was campaigning, he said Liberia was in an emergency room. Since Boakai became president over 7 months going to 8 now, I don't know whether we are still in an emergency room or we are outside of the emergency room now. Our situation is worse. And for people to sit there and think that Boakai is some Jerry Rawlings or Patrice Lumumba or Thomas Sankara is laughable. Why has Boakai done all the last 5 years? Anybody can point to in Liberia besides collecting salaries and benefits. To me, one.
Thank you.
We can have that debate.
Join us on Friday, tomorrow, for Friday night debate. Let's have that debate.
Friday night debate, I will make that time. Because I don't want to debate somebody. Let somebody tell me what Boakai has done for the last 45 years in government besides collecting salaries and benefits.
Thank you, darling.
And I was just
but Dennis, that's untrue, though. I mean,
Augustine Gafon is inherently corrupt. Gafon, when he was the budget director doing early first in 2006, this guy went to work and started funding illegal organizations that benefited he and his colleagues. And when John Molu pointed that out, he started insulting John Molu. In fact, he told us that it was paste and error, cut and paste error. Are you kidding me? So, Boakai has just bringing up educated, experienced, and sophisticated criminals. That's all I can say to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the callers we have. At this time, time is fast spent. We go to our Tabata session. Any Tabata for the week that you want to share?
Are we not responding to the callers?
Time.
Yeah, the time. You tell your
Let
own.
everybody respond. Let everybody respond in their own mind.
But Tom, you want to say something to the callers? Go ahead. Let me give you a minute.
I don't think Elvis followed the point I was making on the drug issue. Yeah, I wasn't saying that, okay, fighting drug is difficult. I was making a point that the government needs to do more because this is something that they campaign on and actually even brought them to power. So, but he's saying like, I'm giving excuse for the government. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is the president should take decision, fix the problems at LDEA, make sure you resource the criminal justice system so that you can address the drug issue. And I think even ECOWAS had a delegation to Liberia a couple of weeks or months ago to be able to see how this thing can be addressed at the regional level. So I don't think he really listened to the point I was making. And
I think in general also, to add to your point, we simplify the drug issue. We think it's just the DA jumping in cars, arresting a few people.
Yeah,
shut down one ghetto here and there, and then say you're fighting drug. That's not a fight. You got to
that's
have a social program. You have to have economic program. You have to have health, mental health program.
yeah.
Everything. You don't just sit on it. And then, in the first place, you have to decide what is drug. What kind of drug is important? Classification scientifically, and say this is what we have, and these are the causes. This is what I do to you, and then you can have an educative program, but not just be Muslim man, t-shirt jumping out of car and grab, one little boy selling two joints of marijuana and say, "Oh yeah, we are arresting people."
Yeah, so
Because
that's why I said once. That's why I said from the beginning, it needs to be a well laid out plan. It needs to be well costed. It needs to be financed, because one of the things that is happening now is that as they are displacing these boys from their hideout, they are now spreading out and sleeping in marketplaces, which then have another economic implication. Because by the time it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening, those people who are selling in the market have to pack out because the Zogos are coming to sleep in the marketplaces. So it's reducing the number of time that people sell in the market. It will have an impact on the income that they make, and then it will have other implications. So this is why it needs to be a programmatic approach to it.
it's not a police situation. It's not a police issue.
Thank you. And when Hassan Fatiga visited them, he said it. He said, "Hey, we are not here to arrest you." And they started playing. DA started playing the kind of rehabilitation role. In fact, they wanted to rehabilitate. I'm like, okay, a lot of people are getting a little over themselves. It's time
Yeah,
for our Tabata of the week. What you got, Dr. Dukley?
Tabata, well, no, I'll pass it. Let them go. I got to find something because there's so many things that I'm thinking about.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I want to share something. It's not Tabata, but something that I saw.
There's your son when they beating the tapping the June or in school at time. He goes still paper make it. He goes still paper make it. They told me that your sister damaged your children. Hey, what's up, guys? I'm about to Prince, and today I'm in the Marshall Bell, to be precise, Raindrop community, and I'm here with this family. They call me over to be able to interview them because they are going through a situation which she cannot handle alone. So, fellow audience, listener, and friends, supporters, please take your own side of the story. How do you, man?
Hello, my son.
Yeah, can you please tell the audience what you call here for?
Yes, I call you for my 5 children,
Okay.
and 3 are here. The one got in the street, small, and here is child that used to love me, help me. He got in the street. I always go for him. When I go, he go back. When I bring him, he go back. Well, in my sister, yeah, that where the problem started from under my son. He when we lie down, then he hear somebody not sound. From there, he and his brother got in the street.
Oh.
Yes, this one. I've been looking for that. I don't know the definition of his brother now. This more than 16 years. I don't know where he is. Now, this child, he been to Zimbabwe for so many years. I've been going for him, bringing him in.
All right.
I got my Tabata.
That was a woman who said all her 5 children, they are Zogos. And because her sister swear her, say,
how to
Very
raise
sad.
them.
Very
My
sad
Tabata
story.
is McGill. McGill got invited for simple information thing. And then the next thing we hear, he jumped to the Supreme Court. And then 20 minutes later on, he said, "No, we withdraw my thing to my request at the Supreme Court." So that's a Tabata.
because he said, yeah, immunity the president to him.
Yeah, before he went to LACC, he said, "Well, I'm just going for, they invited me. I'll make a press conference later on." He didn't make a press conference. And then we heard rumors, "Oh yeah, the president told me to hire 720 people to put them on a separate payroll." And then the next day he withdrew his request to the Supreme Court. That's a Tabata. So somebody's going to go to jail if Boakai is serious.
Mr. Salib, your Tabata of the week.
Well, if you go to see McGill line, McGill's lawyer is, I don't know. I mean, maybe the former Solicitor General He's a very good lawyer. I'm sure he is. But just what people just posted on Facebook that, oh, these two guys are sanctioned, so they only found each other. I thought that was interesting too.
Mr. Cannon, your Tabata of the week.
I don't have a Tabata this week, but I saw something in one of the chat rooms. I mean, I don't know, it was a Facebook post, and the person was saying people go to government, to the public sector, they steal money, they establish private businesses. Yeah, and then they start looking for people they start looking for honest people to go and manage the businesses they created from stealing from the public. So it was really funny.
I hope you were not talking about Thomas Fala University.
Well,
like one of them.
I don't know.
All these people who got millions.
Mr. Kawie, that was his post.
Okay.
Mr. Gibson, what's your Tabata of the week?
Yeah, I don't really have any for this week.
What's about last week?
And
the week before. Okay, we'll make it your Tabata of the month.
All the nyama that go on every day, you got no Tabata.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say the whole situation with who granted the writ of arrest, that alone is laughable. That it was stolen from the clerk. The document is always something interesting.
The clerk really pulled my mother. He said they stole it from me. I didn't give it to them.
Yeah, because the Chief Justice started jailing people.
Yeah, but how difficult is it for the DEA to walk to a magistrate and say we need it because we have suspicion that there's too much drug in the area? How difficult that is that the DEA, a government agency, cannot walk to a government person and say we need a warrant.
Yeah. They're supposed to do that through the city solicitor, who is the representative of the Solicitor General at the magisterial court. But it looked like that was too much, so they, according to this clerk, they stole it from him. I don't know where maybe he got to be at work. Maybe he left. He went for lunch and he come back. Evan Morrissey is Tabata his man. Gotolo advising Yeager that president is next to God, so he shouldn't criticize JNB. Flomo Livingstone said Matabata is judge. We are thinking that his letter he wrote to Igor was the reason they came to Liberia. He wrote the letter, and then Sam Wallow, Matabata is everywhere continuing denial of President Boakai effective efforts at ending impunity and fighting corruption, and the results he has achieved thus far, including prosecution and progress towards setting up the War and Economic Crimes Court. The efforts are effective enough that his predecessor is complaining to ECOWAS only to have ECOWAS express support for the president. Matabata is Sam Wallow is becoming Baghdad Bob. That's Matabata of the week.
But it does have points. I mean, there's a war crime tribunal process in place. There's a ombudsman.
He said FOL is in denial that the president is taking.
No, we're not denial. We're not in denial.
Right, and if you know if these things are happening, we'll see them. We don't need any telescope or some funny binoculars to be able to find if things are getting effective. No, Well, that's all the time we have for the night. We'll go around the room for your closing. Tomorrow, join us right here for Friday night debate, and we'll be debating these issues. Mr. Darling Wawu will be here to tell us why he thinks President Boakai has not accomplished anything. Mr. Gibson, your closing.
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. Always glad to be a part of the discussion. Based off of the assessment from tonight, I think there's a lot that the overall administration of President Boakai needs to really try to figure out which direction they're heading in. What will be his legacy? Will it be a legacy that was focused on preparing for the next generation, as he's been saying? He's not focused on the next election, but for the next generation. Really trying to get Liberia on the right track. So I hope to see, some changes take place, more clear, transparent understanding of what his agenda truly is as he gets past this first year of his administration. Hopefully we'll see more things take shape and more people who are truly invested in doing the work bringing those people in and taking out people who were just there to get a paycheck and to make noise and be in support of things that are not right. So hopefully something will change and he will wake up and, you know, make something happen within these next couple months until we get to the 1 year mark of his administration. But always glad to be a part of the discussion. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you again for the platform.
Glad to have you, William. Sam, oh, Thomas.
Yeah, I think sometimes the way people, so there's a show, there's a topic you discuss, and then you don't mention something and people say we are negative about. No, that's not the issue. I think when you look at the overall picture, like I said, you listen to the president, some of the intent that he has, and I think this is where he needs to speak much more about his intentions. It should not only be you go to a conference and then you go and talk about it on a foreign trip. Talk to the people of Liberia. Frequently, I do know on the issue of the press conference, I think his style of organizing a press conference, he has not done it. But I think he was at the Ministry of Information once.
Yeah, MICAT.
Yeah, MICAT, and he addressed them and he took some questions. I think especially when he's taking these critical decisions, like for instance, when he was signing that resolution from the legislature for the establishment of the War and Economic Crimes Code, I think that was an opportunity to address the nation. Because some of the young people who were born in the 2000s, they don't know the war, how we went through, they don't know how important it is. I think you need to drive these people along. But all of these pieces of things that he are doing, some at this point, they've not been overly successful, the asset recovery team, but they are all directed towards actually starting an effort of ensuring that we have transparency and accountability in our governance system. And like I have said repeatedly, I think this is a good thing for us to build a kind of mechanism in a system where future governments can also come and say, okay, we are going to hold the Boakai government accountable, and that will create fear in the system. So whether it was the War and Economic Crimes Code, the Asset Recovery Committee, the systems that are put in place to be able to drive development, they are all good initiatives. I think the president needs to communicate more and then make sure that people are following what is in his heart to do for Liberia. On the OGAF, as all of us fondly call him, I hope he's not coming back to the Ministry of Finance to come and do what the Ministry of Finance normally does. Yeah, generate the revenue, the budget. We just implement the budget. There is no focus on development planning. And then we realize that 5 years from now, we have used $2 billion. But what is the result that we have achieved? It's not there. So I really hope that he comes from AFDB, come from Uganda, a highly decentralized country with very strong institutions, so that he can bring that exposure to Liberia to be able to push the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. Because the MFDP, if it doesn't work, the government doesn't work. That's the hope that distributes money. On the LDEA, we just call on the president to make the decision, make it functional, leadership is in place, and then resume the fight against drugs. On the former Chief Justice issue, the case has been decided, but for the fact that nobody has been held responsible, I think the justice system should still push forward to be able to bring that perpetrator to justice. And then that will close every conspiracy theory that everyone is having. I think these are all the issues that we discussed. So it was a good show. I hope the caller can come on to debate, because some of the statements he's making, the president has not contributed to anything. I think some of these statements are unfounded. For the fact that you can point to things that were done previously that even made the people to re-elect him, you can say he has not done anything.
I'll hold him to that. Darling is coming tomorrow. Dr. Dukla, you're closing, sir.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, and everybody who listened to us tonight. I think it was a good show. I think, I agree with, both my young brothers and whatever they said on LDA. Boakai need to show that he cares about the drug issue, not just appointing policemen in the DA, but also a whole social program that goes into fighting the drug epidemic in the country. And he needs to talk. He needs to speak.
Yeah.
Leaders are known for what they say, not necessarily what you do. You could get up every morning and go ride a bicycle. People may not, But if you inspire people, and you can only inspire people through your words, and that's what Tolbert did with all of us. Everybody remembers something that Tolbert said. Everybody who was up there remembers something that Tolbert said. Either he did it or not, he gave you an idea. Say, oh, from mat to mat, you sleep on the mat tomorrow, and then tomorrow you got a mattress. How you do it? You got to go to work. To go to work, you got to be on time. He was not called Speedy for nothing, but he spoke. He spoke every moment, every chance he had, he spoke to people and people listened to him. So Boakai can be like the quiet king, and then his spokespeople are contradicting each other every day. When things happen, you got this story, you got that story, and then he doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to address every single issue, but I think, there's some important moments in the last 7 months where his leadership, his voice was needed and he was absent, and he must stop that. For Mususka, they say it's better to let go one guilty person than to have one innocent person die in jail. But we still got to find out who did this, who killed this girl. So I hope it will not come back to haunt everybody. So regarding Gafo, well, new one in old bottle, or old bottle with new one, whatever it is. We'll see what he does. We'll see how, what he does. I hope he learned from something. Being finance minister the first time, but now he goes out and come back with some new experiences. Let's see what he does. Let's see if he's learned from those mistakes that were made during the alien time and all of that. Because there were mistakes.
Yeah. And what other he want can eat? Finance minister, foreign minister, now bad finance minister.
Yeah.
Mr. Salif, now let the governor's man take us home.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. I agree. It was a good discussion. I like to thank our viewers and all those who contributed through comments and calls. This is good, is a discussion in the public square. This is it's better to objectively review these issues that are impacting our country and try to promote a positive image of Liberia than pedestals and promote violence. I will not sort of re-legislate everything my colleagues have said, because some of those summaries I agree with. What I would say, what President Boakai is doing when we see his appointments and we hear some of his utterances, I think the president's heart is in the right place. But like you all have acknowledged, leadership is the team, right? It's just as much as the leader is the one who the buck stops with, who has to speak, who has to inspire. The nation has to inspire followers and has to hold them accountable. But also the people you appoint, the quality of appointment, and how they execute the duties of their portfolios that they carry, I think that's very, very important. So Jim Collins, this management scholar who wrote a book called From Good to Great, right? I always like to cite it because I like his analogy. It says that your organization, be it a country or a company or any group that you are managing, is like a bus, and that bus has many seats on it. It's up to you to figure out which passenger deserves to be on the bus and which passenger should come off the bus. That is not enough to put all the passengers on the bus. It's as important to figure out who sits in what seat, who sits in the premium seat, and how the bus gets to its destination. That means the talents you recruit, the strategic places you put them, how you balance that politically, how you balance that regionally, so that all Liberians see themselves in the government, see themselves in the people who are helping the president to run the government. I think that is important. And hold them accountable, measure their performances, make sure there is an open and transparent government. That coupled with the vision and the statements the president makes and some of the moves he has made on addressing impunity in the justice sector, moving on war economic crimes court issue, establishing an ombuds office, All of those things are things that we need because corruption has been the killer of growth and development in our country. People believe that they get to government is a place to get rich, it's a place to make quick money, it's not a place for public service. We have to change that. So anything that the president is doing to really make people stop and think about that and think more about country than themselves, I see those as great accomplishment. And I'll continue to root for him. And I hope that he corrects some of the missteps and mistakes, and that we'll see better decisions and actions in the foreseeable future. So thank you for the opportunities. It was a good discussion.
And thank you, Mr. President. We are all rooting for you. Bring home the bacon. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We want to thank our viewers for watching. Always focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, we close with a song that says, whatever you believe about President Boakai, what kind of government he's trying to run here, we are all Liberians. Have a good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.